As I mentioned, Peggy and I had a chance to connect a while back about what we'd like to do on this call. Now that we're turning towards a little focus, we decided in June to try to take at least one of these Zoom coffee hours a month and focus on our work of becoming an anti-racist church and what we're doing as individuals and together. Peggy, would it be okay if I just do we want to do any sort of, maybe just one question to put out there for folks before we turn to the future at First Church and in our own lives. Many of you have been participating on calls and Zoom calls and small groups, faith and life groups this summer. Some of you maybe have been involved in work with the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, the Poor People's Campaign. I just wonder, if anybody would like to share a little bit about how they're feeling a sense of growth or movement or transformation or not in terms of your own engagement with these very challenging issues of reckoning with our nation's history of racial inequality and racial injustice. Anybody feeling bold to share with the whole group? Put your hand in the air if you have just a reflection or two. Heather Stewart, welcome. It's great to see you.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. I just want to say that I work at a high school, and I have been looking to the church, to the website, and to the readings, and the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I brought this to the faculty at my school. And then as part of enrolling and attracting students, I've been particularly aware of being sure that we are able to make this kind of education available to everybody, especially for some families who may not be able to access this type of education. So that's been something we've been working at the school. And in particular, we have a family coming from Syracuse, New York, where I happen to grow up, and they're coming to the school, two wonderful boys, and they are still looking for a place to live. So if anybody knows of any sort of affordable housing in the area, that would be wonderful. If anybody knows, you could feel free to contact me. A mom and two sons.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah.
Other brief comments about how this work has been moving in you or us together? Susie.
I had to unmute myself. I don't have a lot to say or think about this, but one thing is interesting to know that the local chapter of Cambridge Daughters of Abraham this month is reading The Cross on the Lynching Tree.
Wow.
And I had a conversation with one of our Jewish members yesterday who is completely puzzled by this book, does not know how to deal with it at all, and wants all of the Christian members of the group to let her know what the cross means to us. So we're going to be meeting on I think the 16th of September, and we're going to be talking about that. And it's on us, the Christian women in the group, to somehow represent our faith and what the cross means. And
that's only the hardest question in all of Christianity.
I know.
Yeah, we'll be praying for you, Susie. We'll be praying for you.
Yeah.
Other, Lindsay, did I see your hand? Go ahead. Lindsay, you got to unmute.
You're muted. Muted.
How unusual.
Yes.
What I wanted to say was the group reads that we have done in small groups have had a profound influence on me, starting with White Fragility a year or so ago, which taught me to look at a new way when people say, I am not a racist. And as you know, probably know her point is that when you say you're not a racist, that doesn't mean I'm not a bad person. So she it's sort of been sequential. Then we did Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. That gave another definition of, to be not a racist means to be against racism. And now I'm reading Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. She proposes yet another term, which is don't even talk about race, think of it as caste, and that of all the things that have been evil about caste in India or Nazi Germany, they apply here. So it's very stimulating, but what I'm thinking is that there's a sort of you have to be initiated in the lingo. I remember Buzz asked, what's the opposite of racism? And I was, could have launched into what I've read in these books, but if you haven't read the books, so in other words, we have to get on, there's a problem with just the very words we use as we're talking and as we learn.
Thanks, Linz. And we have a thought about that as we look towards the fall. Maybe one other comment from someone who's participated in any of our programming this summer.
Marion
has her hand up.
Marion Smith.
So I think Lindsay's hit on something very important, and that's finding an entry point. Because each of us is the product of our environment and our background, and we are who we are. And no matter how we want to be open-minded and learning other ways to look at things, finding an entry point is critical. And it's been an amazing journey. I'm really enjoying, if that's the right word, the wording, me and white supremacy, open doors for me, and the bluest eye, lots of reading, and now I'm to the point of I have to choose. And the discussion that goes with this is also, so join a discussion group if you can, because it's very, very positive experience.
Thank you, Marion. And Beth Loomis, and then we'll shift.
I was just going to say to Lindsay, I had initially proposed a faith and life group around the bookcast, and I was looking for a partner. I reneged that offer because the fall got busy, but if you're interested in winter or spring, that would be a good offering.
Nice. That's great. Okay. Well, I'm glad we have so many of us on the call. We're going to also talk about some of this next week as well as a part of our regathering. But as we look ahead and pivot towards the fall, we wanted to take a moment and just orient us a little bit from our summer of prayer, reflection, and action towards becoming an anti-racist church. This fall, we hope to maintain possibilities and entry points at each of those levels that we laid out, the soul level, a congregational level, a community level, and a national level, because we understand that this affects us at every level of our being and every level of our society. These entrenched legacies of slavery, of white supremacy, of racism. I also would say that we're trying to approach this more holistically as well. By that I mean not just intellectually, but emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And by that, I mean that learning and doing this sort of like book knowledge and understanding these terms and learning this history in our minds is only a piece of the work. And yet we also have to remember to be in our bodies as well. There's a book that I've been reading recently called My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem, who says that until we kind of look at this from a perspective of traumatized bodies, whether it's white bodies or black bodies or police bodies, and can settle our systems and can kind of breathe ourselves into a less intellectual, less reactive place for these conversations. We're going to be a little bit stuck and hung up. So as we turn to the fall, you can anticipate some more embodied practices to go along with our conversations, more moments of centering ourselves, settling our bodies, being in our bodies even as we have these challenging conversations, so that we don't too quickly go to just intellectual reactions. Similarly, spiritually, this is one of the things I'm most excited about. I think all of you at this point know that we have the opportunity to continue our relationship with Carlisle, Stuart Fielding, and Fielding Stewart, the fourth. Carlisle.
Oh, you know,
Carlisle.
any order.
Detroit. He's in Detroit now, and he's starting to, find his steps on a path of some different ministries there. He can tell us about what he's up to, but he's going to carve out a piece of his weeks to be with us, and we're bringing him on as our community minister for racial justice, and he'll be with us at least through January. And this is funded by a grant that we received from the Boston University School of Theology Creative Callings Project. And what Carlisle is going to be doing with us is giving us some spiritual and theological grounding for our work. We know that a lot of people are asking, what does it mean to be anti-racist? And we will do some work over the course of the fall to unpack that, because we know we kind of put that language out there, and we need to sort of fill it in a little bit, because not everybody is in the same place and these words mean different things. But Carlisle is going to help us to understand what is, like, if that's secular language for where this stuff seems to be going in the wider world, becoming an anti-racist company, an anti-racist institution, an anti-racist school, all of this. What is the spiritual and theological language for becoming anti-racist, or for learning more about this? And what he has teed up, and he's going to be with us next Sunday on Regathering Sunday during the service to put this in his own words. But just to preview that a little bit, the theme he's using is a call to return. And I think this is very powerful and profound as we imagine ourselves being called to, as we do this work, called to return to God, return to our truest selves, return to a sense of community. And by that return, he'll be referring to Exodus and other sort of biblical narratives of return. Return my people, Israel. There's a sense that that work of return is not just about going someplace where we've never been, venturing into these hard conversations about race to some, and striving to get somewhere where we haven't been. There's a sense we need to come back to where we already are as beloved children of God. And we need to remember ourselves as beloved children of God and return to that place where we can acknowledge that we and every other creature, every other person of color, every other Black person, every other Indigenous person, we share some common reality in God, and we need to return to that sense of reality. So let me stop there, but I think it's promising, it's fresh, it's profound, and Carlisle will be sharing this new frame with us. He is going to be leading weekly reflection sessions, and we're trying to line those up and get some time. By next Sunday, we hope to have a time. If you want to email him and say what times work best for you, go for it. I think right now he's considering a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday early evening, and we need to sort of work that out with some of the other regular opportunities that we're offering. But he's going to offer weekly reflection sessions over the coming 10 weeks. And then he's also going to be offering what he's calling a town hall, 3 town hall meetings, one on September 27th, one on November 15th, and one on January 17th. And we hope that these conversations will lead outwards so that for the second one and the third one, we can invite other members of the community and other persons of color to join us for conversations about a call to return. So back to the soul level, congregational level, communal level, national level. I'm just going to run through these quick and see if Peggy has some things to add. At a soul level, we will be launching new faith and life groups. Peggy's going to lead one for those who are newer to this conversation, using some chapters from a book called So You Want to Talk About Race. And this is it's specifically kind of geared towards those who are feeling like, whoa, like, how do I even get into this conversation? I don't understand these terms. I don't get these words. I don't get this jargon. And you can join Peggy for that.
And Dave
Alice,
McCann.
And Dave McCann, beautiful. Alice and I are going to continue a monthly faith and life group called Exploring Reparations. And this is at a personal, local, grassroots level. We've had 2 meetings so far, and they've been really rich and wonderful. And there may be some other faith and life groups. At a congregational level, you just heard me talk about Carlisle. Lori Burt is going to be finishing the 3rd of her perspectives amidst a pandemic, and she plans to talk about the climate crisis, race, and COVID. That's going to be on September 20th. All this information is in your bulletins. And then in November, we're going to lead 2 10 o'clock hour series or a 10 o'clock hour series in November, gearing up towards a congregational meeting and an annual meeting in the fall, or in January. Congregational meeting in November, annual meeting in January, where we can figure out what language we want to use as a whole congregation. For the summer, we said the executive council made this statement about becoming an anti-racist church. The congregation has not had a chance to weigh in on that statement. And so whether it's that statement or something different, we'd like to continue to work with this language and deepen it and have more sense of people's understanding of it, and then work towards some congregational decision. At a communal level, we're looking to, we are already building relationships with some local churches. And by that, in particular, I mean the Pentecostal Tabernacle Church in Central Square. A few of us have begun to attend prayer calls on Tuesday afternoons that Bishop Brian Green has been hosting. And stay tuned for more on that. This work is kind of building slowly with just a few people, but I believe there's real potential for our congregations to be doing some work together. And here's the thing. I think we have been working at this for a while, and some of these other congregations and communities are taking notice. And they're saying, oh, this isn't just a bunch of people jumping on a bandwagon as of June since George Floyd. These are people who are doing a lot of homework. And they've heard about our interest in sort of owning and remembering and kind of repenting of our history. And they have also heard about our interest in reparations. And they're saying to us, that's interesting. Let's talk about that, which is a much different starting point than our cold calling some congregations, or our going to congregations and saying, hey, we have this agenda over here that we'd like to sort of share with you. And it feels organic and it feels very promising, and I'm excited to see where that goes next. Let me wrap up. A national level vote, and let me leave it at that for now, and turn it to Peggy to fill things in that I've missed. Peggy, I'd love it if you could share a little bit about the benchmarks group, and then we can open it up. I know that was a lot of information, but we're continuing this work, and we'll be bringing it hopefully at every level: emotional, physical, spiritual, intellectual, and soul, communal, congregational, national.
So just to start with the last one, I've been doing some work, and with some help of a few people, trying to identify some, we've been able to come up with some groups that at least call themselves nonpartisan, but are trying to register and encourage people of color and Black people to vote. And so that might be something you can look for. You know, there's everything from calling, texting, writing postcards to potential voters to register and things. So that will be coming up soon on the, to try to help at the national level. The other thing I was really glad to hear some people say, because I think that a lot of us share this, is some people have been able to do a lot of things, go on, you know, trips down south and read books over the last year. And then other people, you know, from whatever, and also newcomers. We want to make sure that there are entry points and that we're looking at this in different ways, and that we try not to talk in too much jargon, right, about the things. But one of the things that I think is interesting is a year and a half or so ago, the Executive Council set forth and the church ratified the idea that we wanted to be, which at that time we were using the word multicultural, multiracial. And I think we've kind of moved more to using anti-racist than multiracial. Part of that is thinking that we don't really have control over who's in the pews, but we can be as welcoming as possible and as anti-racist as possible. And the joyful result of that would hopefully be that we would have a more diverse congregation. But as we looked at that, so there's a group of people from the executive committee this summer who's been trying to look at, well, what would that look like? You know, what would be the benchmarks that we would say, like, we're a more anti-racist congregation. And so we've been looking at things like, well, what did the governance of the church look like? What will there's people, the deacons, you know, so what is the welcome that the deacons are doing, other worship things? And then also there's people in the group who are from the Christian formation group. Like, what would that look like if it was really anti-racist, both for the children and for the adults? And what would missions and social justice look like? How would we make those decisions, and who would we give our money to? So something we'll involve everyone with as the fall goes by, and we look at what does it mean to be an anti-racist church. But a group of us just thought, well, if we just had a few examples out there, it sounds so abstract, right, to come up with benchmarks. But so we've just been trying to come up with a few, and we're just meeting again once more in September. And people have been doing that this summer. So I'm grateful to people who spent the summer, you know, trying to think of benchmarks, not the most summer-like activity. But anyway, you'll be looking for those, and we'll be asking people, you know, we're not deciding them like for the missions and social justice group, but we're coming up with a few examples so that we can all think more practically of what would our church really look like if it's multicultural, anti-racist. We talked about one of our goals is being radically welcoming. And what does that really look like? So that's just a little more elaboration on it, and something that, you know, we're going to give lots of opportunity for people to think about with us, but we're just coming up with a few of those. I think that's all. And I do think, you know, we were coming up with some faith and life groups, and I also been reading that same book, Dan, My Grandmother's Hands. So I'm looking forward to, you know, some new things as they're kind of quickly getting published. It's almost hard to keep up with all the new things going on.
For sure. I mean, the conversation is evolving so quickly that, you know, 6 months ago, the sort of latest way to talk about it has evolved. And I think that's very exciting. And I think it invites us to be flexible and nimble as we continue to do the work, as we continue to kind of step forward and not get locked into any particular, you know, terms or frameworks, but to hold that loosely and to really follow where we believe God is calling us. And there again, I think Carlisle's contributions this fall, and as we move forward together in a more spiritual and theological way, will be enormously helpful. So let me stop and see what questions, what comes up for you as you hear all of this information, and it'll be written down at some point. What are you thinking? What may be missing for you, or what surprises you? What are you worried about? Just open it up a little bit, and please just raise your hand if you have something you'd like to say. And understanding there are no dumb questions, there are no bad questions. We're not here to judge each other. We want to approach each other with curiosity and wonder and respect and love, and understanding we're all at different points on the journey. So questions or comments or ideas? Alex.
Hi.
Hi.
I would just, I did read Cast, and when you're ready, Beth, I'm up for that, to do that with you at some point.
Great.
Would love to. But I just wanted to read one tiny piece of it. Would that be okay, Dan?
Sure. Yeah.
'Cause I think it really, it touched me in a way about how I'm feeling, or how I feel like other people have been feeling about reparations and racism. So I'm just gonna, it's just a quick quote. When Dunkley takes German students on tours of the history of the Third Reich, he asks them their reaction to what they've seen. Do you as Germans feel any guilt for what the Germans did? He will ask them. They will go off into groups and have heated discussions among themselves and then come back to him with their thoughts. Yes, we are Germans and Germans perpetrated this, some students once told him, echoing what others have said. And though it wasn't just Germans, it is the older Germans who were here who should feel guilt. We're not here. We ourselves did not do this. But we do feel that, as the younger generation, we should acknowledge and accept the responsibility. And for the generations that come after us, we should be the guardians of the truth. I just love that phrase, thinking of myself and others, letting go of the guilt, but feeling like we are guardians of the truth. And that's a, it helped for me to think about spiritually, you know, telling the truth, giving it a name. I just like that. So I wanted to share it with people.
Thank you so much, Alex. Reminds me of another frame that I've heard about trying to be better ancestors, you know, in terms of guardians from the truth that we're passing on. Like, how can we be better ancestors than our ancestors were to us? And they certainly were trying to be better ancestors than their ancestors were, but
Sure.
you know, but how can we pass on a different world? Other questions, comments, ideas, pushback? Nancy Kilburn, happy birthday.
I'm about to run out of charge on my computer, so I wanted to speak before that happened. Just a thought that comes to mind, that in the midst of all this work, sometime in the summer, I tuned in to a program happening at Roxbury Presbyterian Church, and that's a church that we've had a pretty long-standing relationship with. And they were running a program, a Zoom call, basically on racism, and people could speak, you know, as they wanted to. And there was something really bracing and not just challenging, but it took a lot to witness the fear, the rage from people I know well who have never spoken like I were hearing them speak that night. And I feel like that's an opportunity. You can tune into that call and just be a name or a number or a, you know, there's no, it's very, there are some opportunities in this time of disconnection to connect to things just by joining the call. So I feel like this fall, we're probably gonna have a lot of different opportunities, and to see what the truth is on the ground right now for people who are the inheritors of those just decades and generations, and as recently as 2008, and right now in the COVID, you know, of that disenfranchisement and living it day to day. So that was my thought.
Yeah.
Alice.
Following up on what Nancy said, I think it's a joy to me that we're developing relationships across racial lines. And in working with Cooperative Metropolitan Ministries, I've come across a lot of situations which are hard to believe, but are there. For instance, I was working yesterday with a lady who has no heating system, and there's skepticism as whether a bank would give her a loan or not. And I think there are opportunities here for the church to become involved as we proceed along these lines.
Thanks, Alice. Other questions, thoughts, ideas? What's turning in you? What's turning in us as a church? Raise your hand if you'd like to share something. I'll say that one of the things that's been a little bit challenging about the Zoom screens is that seeing all these faces in boxes and seeing how many white faces we have and how few persons of color we have it's hard, and yet it is a reality that you know, when you kind of break it down on a screen like this, it's just that much more visible how separate our communities can be and are. Gandhi, I see your hand up. I'm going to call you in just a moment. But I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Moana has offered to convene a Black, Indigenous, person of color space, time, and community, like a caucus for those folks at First Church who may want to talk with other persons of color at First Church about what it's like to be a person of color going through this, you know, being a part of this congregation, as so many white folks are wrestling and kind of moving in all these different directions. And I'm grateful to Moana for doing that and for offering that. At some point down the road, we may want to have other caucuses. I've just been doing a training with white men on what it's like to sort of be a white man trying to, the training is called Defecting from Supremacy. And it's like 150 white guys on a call like this, all trying to learn what we can about the ways that our culture has restricted expectations of us, and how we all need to be free from this. It's very powerful stuff. I'm wondering maybe about leading a caucus for white men. But let me leave it at that. Gandhi, did you want to share something?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, everyone. I do wanted to share something about data. I've been looking at the data of the past. I've been in this country for about 25 months now. And I was looking at the attacks against different races or different cultures. And I came across the anti-Semitism in this country. And it was quite shocking to me to read about the synagogue shootings in California or the kosher market stabbing last year. And I came across this data that in the past 25 months, the number of Jews that have been killed in the US is equivalent to the number of Jews that are in my home state in New Delhi, India. And that is quite shocking to me. And when I look back that I'm from the oldest civilizations in the world, and there have been no anti-Semitic attack against Jews, none. It is so minuscule that it's not even present. Whereas on this side of the world, or in the Middle East, or even in Europe in the past, there have been so many attacks against Jews. And of course, US history is not taught to us. And I've had a chance to examine and experience the present policies in place by people in power. And I couldn't help but look at the policies of the past. From Jim Crow to segregation, these policies are quite foreign to me. As when Hollywood spreads its American propaganda, it fails to highlight that unbrave men do thrive in the home of the brave. And I think that is what's happening. As you mentioned, Dan, as well, you would also have to look at the data. As you said, that you see faces, that there are a lot more white faces than people of color in this Zoom chat. I think that also depends on the number of population. It depends on majority and minority.
Sure.
From where I am, we have different shades of brown. Some can pass for white, some can pass for black. So it depends on which area you live in, I guess. But I'm so glad that the church is open to all. And I think it all starts, and as Gandhi said, we have to be the change we wish to see in the world. And it starts at home. It starts at the religious communities, and it starts in our hearts.
Beautifully put, Gandhi. Thank you so much.
Powerful.
maybe that's a note to close the call on, reading those beautiful words from Gandhi and Gandhi's ancestor, Gandhi. Thank you so much for that. How can we be the change we want to see as individuals, as a congregation? This is not a linear process, and so it feels so often like we're moving in so many different directions at once. But I believe it's a spirit-led process, and I'm with you, Gandhi, that it needs to begin in religious communities and continue. So thank you all. Stay tuned. There'll be more opportunities. If you have questions or wondering how you can get involved, if you have like pushback, if you're like, I don't like the way this is taking shape, please, please, please reach out to me, reach out to Peggy Stevens. Dave Kidder and Alice are also very much involved in the beloved community work that we've been doing. Let us know, because we'd love to hear from you, both what we're doing right and what we could be doing differently or better. So let's keep in touch. And as we close, let's just try to get use our bodies a little bit. And if you can touch the sides of your screen a little bit, we can maybe try to connect our arms and blessing. You see that? That's kind of sweet, right? Looks good. And let's ask God for a blessing. Loving God, be with us through this day, this Sabbath day that you have made. Let us rejoice. Let us be glad in it. Let us be glad in the good work that you have given us to do, to be a beloved community, to be who we already are, God. Your beloved children, all of us, of all races, of all sexualities, of all orientations, of all abilities, of all genders. God, we are so grateful for the gifts of your diversity and your creation and the ways they manifest in us. Take us forth to be the change that we want to see. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.